Cultural aspect to business practices are understood very critical as the brand is regarded as a medium for cultural expression and the journey to icon status requires the ability to create radical cultural expression. The managerial implications of the cultural approach can roughly be divided into three options. The very first step is a marketer can choose to implement the cultural branding model following in the footsteps of the iconic brands. As for the second option, a manager can also benefit from insight into cultural approach by becoming aware of cultural criticism and using it as an add-on to chosen branding strategy. Finally, the third thought is to act as a citizen artist brand, which more or less is a merger between first two thoughts. The second thought becomes more important to understand deep as the brand manager in this role should get ready for a rather complicated work agenda. It is considered complicated because in this role the manager has to act as an activist and respond to society's new cultural needs. In this role, the manager should not only be able to understand the legacy of the brand as a myth creator, but also be able to be a cultural trendsetter, not by exploiting what is hot and happening right now, but rather be the one defining hot and happening. The cultural brand management process consists of two stages. The stage 1 is about gathering and analyzing cultural knowledge, and stage 2 is about composing the cultural brand strategy. Stage 1 is about gathering and analyzing cultural knowledge. The gathering of relevant cultural knowledge is required for aspects of culture that must be identified and uncovered. The first aspect is about documenting brand's cultural and political authority. In order for a brand manager to document the brand's cultural and political authority, he should look back in time, look back into historical activities to comprehend what historic activities constrain or enhance the future myth-making ability of the brand. In other way, one can understand that the brand manager has to understand the reputation and the ability of the brand. In the cultural approach, the brand's reputation is considered to be the reputation for telling certain kind of stories, for competing in a certain myth market. This reputation gives the brand with a cultural and political authority and create meaning that the brand has a reputation for telling stories and performing myth about a certain notion. The second aspect is to identify the emerging cultural contradiction. The identification of emerging cultural contradictions requires a thorough understanding of the cultural context. The manager needs to deeply understand the cultural contradictions of the time and how they feed the hopes and anxieties of the relevant consumer segments. The third stage is about to immerse brand team in populist world. To align all related dimensions and to improve implementation, one must sense the real ground reality. To attain perfection into this, brand team must look for gaining cultural membership in the relevant populist world. Stage 4 is about developing empathetic understanding of the followers' identity projects. The building of great myth require an empathetic and deep understanding of the collective identity projects of the relevant consumer segment. The empathetic understanding is critically important as it cannot be found on the periphery of the brand loyalist, as it is the nucleus of the brand insiders and brand followers that can reveal the most significant outlets of the cultural contradictions. After gathering and analyzing cultural knowledge, the stage 2 is about composing cultural brand strategy. Here, the objective is to comment and provide the relevant cultural text addressing the socio-cultural tensions of the time. Here, the step 1 is about identifying the most relevant cultural contradiction to target. After having identified the cultural contradiction to target, step 2 comes into the picture where a cultural brief has to be composed and executed in the right way. This task is composed of 3 sub-steps. As for the first sub-step, a traditional positioning statement should be substituted by a myth treatment in which the brand's proposed cultural role is clarified. As for the second sub-step, execution of the brand communication should elevate itself from being a parasite on popular cultural trends. It should rather develop a populist authenticity of its own terms. Furthermore, third sub-step says that the brand should communicate by means of its own charismatic aesthetics. In sum, the brand communication should adopt its own independent voice and play a proactive role in the culture of its time.